Good morning, all. Could you please stand for the playing of the national anthem? Thank you. Please remain standing as I invite Mr. Everest Jamari to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Let us give thanks for life and all the resources placed at the disposal of mankind. We pray for the wisdom that the resources placed especially at the disposal of the GEF Small Programs Program, that they may be always directed to those most in need and able to use them. And pray also that those resources will enhance the lives of all those impacted. May this morning's proceedings take place in a spirit of love and unity, and that all participants, physical and virtual, find value and satisfaction in making the proceedings a successful one. In the spirit of gratitude for being here in good health, we give thanks. We do so in Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. Thank you very much, Mr. Jamari. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci. We are here for the launch of the OP7, as we call it, at the GEF-SGP UNDP, but it's the operational phase 7 country program, St. Lucia. My name is Ember Charles, and I'll be guiding you through the proceedings this morning. Before we start, I want to acknowledge in our midst some of our special guests. We do expect the Minister of Responsibility for Education, Innovation, Gender Relations, and Sustainable Development, Dr. Gail Rigobert, will be joining us shortly. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Responsibility for Education, Innovation, Gender Relations, and Sustainable Development, Ms. Caroline Eugene, Dame Emerita, Governor General of St. Lucia, Dame Emerita, ex-Governor General, sorry, Dame Paulette Louisi, the Chair of the National Steering Committee, Dr. Rosemary Mathre, and the former Chair, Dr. Barbara Graham, and members of the NSC who are joining us in person and also virtually, the President of the CUIN, Ms. Kanita Melius, Mr. Norani Aziz, who is the Executive Director of the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association, Ms. Lynelle Malzer, Director of Innovation in the Ministry of Education, Gender Relations, and Sustainable Development, all our grantees who are here with us in person and virtually, and others who are joining us in person as well as virtually. This is really a special occasion for the local program of the GEF. It's at the time when we launch the strategy for the coming year. As you would know, that GEF has been in operation in St. Lucia for some time now and has made a significant impact on the lives and livelihoods of many communities in St. Lucia. To officially start off our program, let me invite the chair of the National Steering Committee, Dr. Rosemary Husbands-Mathrin, to deliver the welcome remarks. Why is this changing? I didn't.
Good morning, everyone. Let me adopt the protocol that has been well established by our chair of the proceedings, except to correct that Ms. Caroline Eugene is the PS in the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports. Good morning to everyone. I wish, on behalf of the GEF-SGP UNDP and the members of our National Steering Committee, to welcome all of you here, as well as those joining us on television, social media, and YouTube. On the 14th of October, a mere 2.5 weeks ago, the St. Lucia Steering Committee for the GEF-SGP UNDP submitted its annual report for 2019 to the government and people of St. Lucia, in which it featured the projects of the year under review. Today, the UNDP GEF-SGP launches the 7th operational program of the GEF-SGP UNDP with a projected investment of 6.75 million EC dollars over the next 4 years. The availability of this budget is highly dependent on St. Lucia's performance in implementing its country program strategy and in CSOs absorbing, raising co-funding, and using these funds in a timely manner. To date, our rate of absorption has not reached the desired levels, and we look forward to a significant quantum change during OP7. The OP5 and OP6 budgets funded projects in the Soufriere, Canrees, Mandeli to Fall River landscapes in the areas of biodiversity conservation, land degradation, climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation, international waters, chemical wastes. In this OP7 program, 4 operational strategies are being pursued. They are: 1, capacity building of CSOs; 2, the upscaling of initiatives in apiculture, climate smart agriculture, organic farming and health, and community conservation and sustainable livelihoods; 3, the full operationalization of research and innovation, partnerships at the local and regional levels for effective knowledge sharing. I personally look forward to the development and upscaling of initiatives in the apiculture industry with its promise of new knowledge through research and innovation and cooperation within the region. The GEF-SGP UNDP will continue to support the dialogue between civil society organizations, government, and the private sector, as it did through the Knowledge Fair in OP6, and will fund and promote projects of social inclusion, gender equality, and empowerment of vulnerable persons, which falls high on its agenda. With this short insight into our plans for OP7, I wish to welcome you to the launch of OP7 2020 to 2024, and we turn to a more thorough and detailed presentation by the National Coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have accepted the protocol, but there are people in here I really have to identify before I begin to speak. Mr. Aziz, welcome. Executive Vice President of the St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association. Dame Paulette, welcome. Ms. Lynelle Malzin, Director of Innovations, a lady I've started to work with very closely because over the next 4 years, we're going to be focusing on research and innovation. I see Caroline Eugene is back. I almost want to call her Mama Jeff, and you'll find out in a while why I call her Mama Jeff, because she and a gentleman by the name of Ventland Paul, together in the formative Lucia, carried this program for St. Lucia, and today we'll be recognizing that contribution. Graham, who took us through a significant period of expansion and growth of the GEF Small Grants program. All the way from Choiseul, I really want to recognize Mr. Felix Human, the president of Bellevue Cooperatives, the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative. Welcome, sir, you and your special wife, your wife. Not that you have other wives. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being there, persons in cyberspace, persons who are here today. It's always a delight to begin a journey, always a delight, always a delight to present a program. But today I'll be digressing a bit in the initial presentation because I believe one of the points that we don't emphasize in our discussion of climate change and so on is the cultural context. And Prime Minister Mia Mottley's speech recently really caused me to think and ponder about the culture as part of our development. I want to begin by throwing you back to what we call a geological clock. If you take a geological clock, or if you take the first 12 hours of a geological clock, and you compare this to the universe, the lifespan of the universe of 4.6 billion years. So 4.6 billion years is equal to 1 hour. Ladies and gentlemen, human beings appeared on the earth at 1 minute before 12 o'clock. I want you to understand that. If you take 4.6 billion years and you put it equal to 12 hours, we as a species appeared on the earth at 1 minute before 12 o'clock. So 11 hours and 59 minutes, we were not there. And in that 1 minute, consider what we have done to the earth. That 1 minute is equivalent to about 200,000 years. And that is why many scholars now are calling the period we are in now the Anthropocene epoch. The Anthropocene epoch. A term that was given great credibility by Eugene Stomer and also by the Dutch chemist, Nobel laureate, Mr. Kreuzer. So remember that. We were late in coming to the earth, but the extent of our devastation is beyond our understanding. Even when we look at the reflections about climate change from reputable international panels and so on, like the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, the admonition is there. In 2007, the IPCC warned us, warming of the climate system is unequivocal, as is now evident from observations of increases in global average air and ocean temperatures, widespread melting of snow and ice, and rising global average sea level. That was 2007. Last year, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Secretary General Guterres, writes, climate change is the defining challenge of our time. Time is fast running out for us to avert the worst impacts of climate disruption and protect our societies from the inevitable impacts to come. Now, if you read this statement very carefully, he's suggesting futuristic, and at the same time, he's suggesting it is inevitable. So we are running towards a climate scenario in which the negative impacts are inevitable. So we've basically created a future in which the negatives are going to surpass the positives. We are in a serious situation, ladies and gentlemen. Before I proceed, though, I also want to reflect on our culture as well. Our great Derek Walcott tells us we have been losing our culture. In a flight of pelicans, he writes, in my boyhood on our island, there was a sight which, like the vanished ritual of pelicans, of course the environment aspect, crossing the bays at dusk, was doomed to memory. The hoisting and moving of houses intact from one side to another by groaning neighbors in a rite known as the coup de main. The empty evening water may miss the file of homing pelicans, but another generation cannot regret what it has not seen. Friendship as a sweating and groaning burden. Modern ecological disaster can happen to human nature. It can lose ritual and custom. When charity declines into nostalgia, we are all reduced. I want to repeat that. When charity declines into nostalgia, we are all reduced. Charity to neighbor, charity to community, charity to organizations, charity to our region, charity to the world. We are entered into a period, the Anthropocene epoch, where we are destroying the environment. In fact, at one point in time, there were pelicans in the Castries Harbor, but they have since gone extinct. Pelicanus occidentalis. They have since gone extinct. By who? By us. So we are losing our culture and we are losing our environment. But I want to go back to 1954. Martin Carter, a Guyanese poet, reminds us of where we came from. He writes, I come from the nigger yard of yesterday, leaping from the oppressor's hit and the scorn of myself. I come to the world with scars upon my soul, wounds on my body, fury in my hands. I turn to the histories of men and the lives of the peoples. I examine the showers of sparks and the wealth of the dreams. I am pleased with the glories and sad with the sorrows, rich with the riches, poor with the loss. From the nigger yard of yesterday, I come with my burden. To the world of tomorrow, I turn with my strength. Carter, writing way back in 1954, before I was born, was telling us, despite the burden of the past, the future belongs to us, and we must look to the future for our strength. Culture has strength. In the last 20 years, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves has written extensively on Caribbean civilization. We are worthy of the best, producing the best, and taking care of its people. The Caribbean civilization should be doing all of this. And recently, Prime Minister Mia Mottley talks of cultural confidence, having such pride in our identity and our culture that we assert ourselves, our inventiveness, our artistic ability, our pioneering ability and functions. We are no less than any other country in the world, and we must begin to have that pride in ourselves. But in using our culture as a foundation for sustainable development. But while doing that, we should not turn inwards and forget about outwards. So Arthur Lewis admonishes us. If we are going to close our minds in a box of our pure West Indianness, he writes in the early 1970s, we shall achieve nothing worthwhile. So we have to leave with a firm understanding of who we are, our cultural identity and our cultural confidence must grow, and we have to look out there, understand, adapt, and import the good ideas that can lead us to sustainable development. But there are existential threats that we are going to encounter. There are 4 of them I could put my hands on. The first is climate change. And we all know what it is, what's happening. The Arctic is melting. The permafrost is melting. The animals are being affected. Our food security can be in jeopardy. We have acidification of the oceans. A number of other negatives are happening all around the world. The coronavirus reminds us of pandemics, but there are other diseases like dengue that will affect us. And my friends tell me that this pandemic is not the first and not the last. And let us get prepared for those in the future. The issue of social instability, we see it manifested in crime and so on. And the governance, the people's democracy that we need to be very pervasive if we are to grow as a strong small island developing state. So the challenge, ladies and gentlemen, even before I go into the environmental issues, is to create a democracy where we do no more harm to the environment, where the principle of equity is fully operationalized, where the people and the economy are resilient, and where our differences will not serve to destroy us, but strengthen us. We're talking of this Caribbean civilization. Caribbean civilization in which we are all proud to be Caribbean people, in which we are producing in a sustainable way for now and the future. I thought I would start with these few words on culture, because so often we forget culture is the basis, the foundation on which we live. So often we forget this is where we get the internal force to conquer the challenges of the future. So let's begin. OP7 focus 2020 to 2024. Our mandate as a national organization belonging to an international multilateral facility is to address global environmental problems at the country level, at the community level, through the GEF focal areas. There are 6 of them: biodiversity, climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, land degradation, sustainable forest management, international waters, and chemicals and waste. Our funding levels are at 3 levels: 5,000 for planning grants, 50,000 for implementation grants or full grants, and 150,000 for strategic projects that we can upscale. Whatever we do, we look at the 3 objectives: environmental sustainability, poverty reduction, and capacity development. Do no harm to the environment, reduce poverty as we implement projects, and show people how to fish. Don't only give them fish, but show them how to fish so that they can feed themselves in the future. And what is a country program strategy? It is a planning document. Every country needs one to access funding, designed and developed through a participatory process to enable the Small Grants Program to achieve impacts in a dynamic environment of competing needs, championed by different stakeholders with varying agendas. It is the primary document which clearly articulates the platform for programming in each country. It is a guide to program and project development. It lays the basis for project implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, and is a vehicle for developing and maintaining a results-oriented, knowledge-driven program over an operational program period, which is usually 3 to 4 years. Without this document, we cannot access funding. And with this document, it is an intent, it is a strong message to the world that this is what we are going to do as a small island developing state. So all my colleagues in 125 countries must produce a country program strategy every 3 to 4 years in order to access the money and begin programming for that period of time. In St. Lucia, the methodology we used was quite intense. We hired a consultant, and to understand how this document emerges, if you look to the left, northwest of the diagram, you see the UNDP Sub-Regional Office priorities. You see the GEF and UNDP global priorities there, and you see the GEF-SGP global priorities. We had to review all those documents, distill from it what was relevant to St. Lucia. But that didn't stop there. We had to go and, of course, distill the lessons from OP6, which was the period ending to June of this year, identifying what we have learned, what were the outcomes of the projects, the 97 projects or so we had implemented in the previous period from 2012 to December 2019. We also had to look at all the priorities for St. Lucia from the various publications from the government of St. Lucia, looking at their focal areas, priority reports to the UN, identifying priorities. We also had to have stakeholder consultations. So the consultant went into Soufrière and to Canaries and had meetings with different cohorts, community consultations. All of that was brought together because sustainable cities was going to be a new area of funding. We had meetings with the mayor of Castries and his CEO. All that information was distilled, analyzed, and out of that came our country program strategy. Our working principles, what drives us, we want to work in a decentralized way. We want to be transparent and participatory, inclusive. Efficiency is always a hallmark of what we do. We want to be flexible, particularly when we work in with communities, and we want to be cost-effective throughout the work that we do in St. Lucia and in the other 124 countries around the world. We went back and reviewed what our investment was for the previous 8 years. You will see we had funded 97 projects at December 2019, an investment of 6.39 million United States dollars, which is equivalent to about 17.2 million Eastern Caribbean dollars. Our co-funding ratios, the average was 1 to 1.44, meaning that for every $1 we invested in St. Lucia, we attracted 1.44 in co-funding. The employment generated, the estimated was 1,612 in that period. The income generated was about $737,000. That is from our projects. And the number of persons trained were in excess of 12,000 persons between 2012 and December 2019. These people were trained in everything from project development to aquaponics, to organic farming, to diving, to snorkeling, to water quality monitoring, and so on. All of this is listed in the annual report we presented about 2.5 weeks ago. This is the spatial spread of our projects. As you can see, it's all around the country with a noticeable cluster on the West Coast. And the reason is because we are mandated to focus on the poorest parts of St. Lucia, the marginalized canneries, ancillary, Soufriere, those places. It doesn't mean we don't fund projects in other parts of St. Lucia. I want to tell you that those pins are identifying where the grantees, that is to say, where the grantees are located, not necessarily where the projects took place, but where they have their address and where they operate from. This represents 97 projects at December 2019. Selection of landscapes. During OP6, we focus on 3 landscapes, Canaries, Soufriere, and Mandalay to 4, Soufriere, and Mandalay to 4 landscape. However, in OP7, we have decided to reduce the number of landscapes from 3 to 2, primarily because of a reduction of funding and because at the East Coast, there is a medium-sized GEF project that has commenced, bringing in a lot more money than we have to that part of St. Lucia. So we will be focusing our investment on the West Coast, in the communities of Canaries, and also in the communities of Soufriere, for reasons of poverty, for reasons of high biodiversity rates, and for the continuation of the benefits that have started to accrue to the people in those areas. When the consultant did her stakeholder meetings in Canaries and Soufriere, the main strategies that came out of those consultations were as follows. Pollution is a serious problem in places like Canaries, the Canaries River. In fact, one of the studies we did showed not only E. coli and other bacteria, but we are finding such things as caffeine and acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Panadol, in the waters now, not only in St. Lucia, but in the Caribbean. Imagine you don't have to buy Panadol again, you just have to, drink some water. So headache, Mr. Aziz, you know what to do. We are finding those active ingredients in the water supply. And one wonders what else there is. Solid waste management is an issue. Land degradation is another issue, and then the technical support that is required for CSOs to access the funding that is available out there. In Soufriere, well, we have said for years now, we have done a number of baseline studies in the water from the river and also the coastal zone. Land degradation is an issue in the hinterland, particularly Fort Saint-Jacques, coming down westward from the hinterland. There are serious issues there from bad land management practices, and also development of agroforestry and other income-generating programs. So these came out of consultations in those communities. Now, the results framework for GEF-7 is as follows. Whatever we do should be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And out of the country program document for the UN, we have pulled out 2 of the objectives, that is sustainable ecosystem and natural resources, climate change, clean energy, and disaster risk management as the 2 areas we're going to focus on. And our OP7 SGP programmatic goal is to promote and support innovative, inclusive, and impactful initiatives and foster multi-stakeholder partnerships at the local level to tackle global environmental issues in priority landscapes and seascapes. We want innovative, inclusive, and impactful initiatives. We want initiatives that will show difference, that will make a difference in the environment. No longer can we just implement projects for project's sake. We have to make sure those projects have a net positive impact on the environment. We have to make sure that the projects reduce pollution in our coastal zone. We have to implement projects that are going to bring about positive changes. Some of the strategic initiatives we're going to implement include community-based conservation of threatened ecosystems and species. And towards the right, have the diagram. We will improve community-led biodiversity-friendly practices in agriculture, fisheries, forestry, tourism, and even infrastructure when it is possible. So conservation of those ecosystems, the basis of our survival, our life, the beauty of St. Lucia, we have to look into this and to see how we can protect it. Agriculture and fisheries and food security is also part of the focus for OP7. We want to increase efficiency and effectiveness of overall food production and value chain. In other words, we want to see how we can help our people in St. Lucia to reduce the average cost of production, particularly in agro-processing. Perhaps we can solarize factories and therefore reduce the average cost of production and therefore make those agro-processing facilities more competitive in St. Lucia and in the region. We are going to look for those kinds of opportunities where our funds can make major impacts, and you will hear about one of those projects a little later on. Low carbon energy access co-benefits. Here again, we're using climate change mitigation measures in both solar and, if possible, wind. We have not had a wind experiment in St. Lucia under the SGP since we came back to St. Lucia. So we're hoping that this could be a possible area for investment. Local to global coalitions of chemicals and waste management. Chemicals have been found in all our foods now in different forms, in different concentrations. And though we have no causation, but there's some correlation showing that in parts of St. Lucia, where bananas were planted in high densities, the cancers are increasing in those areas. And we want to watch this very carefully. So we will try our best to see what we can do, particularly prevent the burning of plastics and prevent the dioxins from entering the environment. And of course, to reduce the chemicals in agriculture. We'll be launching a book today that was produced in St. Lucia with the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association, and you will see how we have found ways to use biofertilizers and biopesticides from the own ingenuity of our farmers in St. Lucia. The new kid on the block, I call it, the strategic initiative, is Sustainable Urban Solutions. For the first time in St. Lucia, we are going to devote resources to a sustainable city, or moving Castries and other cities, other towns in St. Lucia towards greater sustainability. Everything from waste and chemical management, energy, perhaps alternative energy, transportation. We have the potential pedestrianization of the center of Castries. This is something that is of great importance to us. Myself, as an environmental planner, I look towards that kind of change in St. Lucia. And we have other projects in the world, particularly in Eastern Europe, where you have solarized cars in pedestrianized parts of central business districts. So we can adopt and learn from those other parts of the world. And we can have young men and young women who are trained to pilot those or to drive those solarized vehicles. Private sector, CSO government, private sector policy and planning dialogue platforms, continuation of dialogue, continuation of discussion of how to move forward. Now, it is important to understand that the kinds of problems we face today, one of my professors called them meta problems. You see, meta problems are problems that have an infinite number of variables, most of which are not calculable. In other words, when 10 years ago, 30 years ago, we used the word solution, to us, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4. Now, the complexity of problems means that you have to continue to improve and learn while implementing. It's almost an action learning process because the variables that come at you, sometimes the very act of interfering, I say that, and implementing solutions cause the variables to change. Interesting paper written by Tim Cartwright on this. So we're going to promote more discussion among the private sector, government, and CSOs to see if we can come up with solutions that are monitored over time. Strategic Initiative 7, social inclusion is important to us. We cannot forget our poor, marginalized sectors of society. We are going to use this as one of our criterion for approval of projects. Knowledge management, capturing the lessons, storing the lessons, distilling the lessons, sharing them as much as possible. We have a storehouse of knowledge from 90, in fact, we are now at 104 projects since we are now into OP7. The storehouse of information and knowledge. How do we bring it to the attention of our people to contribute to decision-making and solving problems? Very important. South-South exchanges are going to be important to us. We are now, I will talk a little bit about the project in a while. That includes Samoa, all across the Pacific, and the 6 of the Caribbean islands. Monitoring evaluation, I can tell you now the GEF is very, very strict on that. We need to put our monitoring and evaluation matrices in place, and we need to quantify and, even in qualitative context, document what happens and share it over time. What we call the fundamental priorities of sustainability in the context of the SGP are those 3 areas: research and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 23rd of this month, we will have the People's Parliament in downtown Castries in the parliamentary chamber. We are for the first time bringing together 6 St. Lucian overseas luminaries and about 20 local luminaries. And I speak of people of outstanding credentials. Dr. Dorr from the University of Bristol has just discovered the way to say precisely in 15 minutes what specific bacteria has invaded your bloodstream. So no longer will you be able to go to a doctor and say, okay, try this. Come back in 3 days if it doesn't work. With Dr. Dorr's invention, in 15 minutes, the doctor will know specifically what species of bacteria has invaded your system and therefore have a targeted antibiotics to cure it. Homegrown son, Babono, Cape State, St. Mary's College, University of Bristol. We're going to have Professor Cato Lawrenson, University of Connecticut. Professor Lawrenson has been in the top 100 doctors in the United States of America for the last 15 years. Orthopedic surgeon, MD, stem cell research. He's doing work that is considered the pioneer in. We will get to hear from Professor Lawrenson. Dr. Duran from Vieux-Fort. She's doing work at Harvard, MIT now. She's discovered the trigger that causes cancer to metastasize. St. Lucia, you hear what I'm saying? Our St. Lucians in the diaspora doing that kind of work. Professor Aldry at Mona doing work in social policy, deviance, and so on. These are the kind of persons you're going to be hearing from. In addition to our local luminaries, we're going to bring them together, and out of this gathering in the Parliament of St. Lucia, we'll have a document that will feed into what we call a Hiranora Declaration. And out of that process, we have projects in St. Lucia, perhaps for a competitive process to address some aspect or some challenge that we have in sustainability. The other one, consolidation of the CSO architecture. we have a serious challenge in St. Lucia. We have invested in the establishment of the Vaughan A. Lewis Institute for Research and Innovation. We have invested in the establishment of the Coalition of Civil Society Organizations of St. Lucia. However, one of this, the second, the application for its full incorporation as a non-for-profit organization under the Companies Act is held up in one of the offices of the government of St. Lucia. We want this to accelerate because we are missing opportunities to access funding for civil society organizations in St. Lucia. And I hope the powers that be will act and get this application approved as soon as possible. Upscaling, ladies and gentlemen. Upscaling is the basis of transformation. If we cannot upscale, our projects remain minute projects at the community level. We need to begin to upscale over time. And what are the areas of upscaling? We have 4 areas. Apiculture. Apiculture will no longer in this country be only honey production. We will go up the value chain, we will prepare propolis, beeswax, and we will prepare apitoxins at 99% purity level, and we will export it at $99 a gram. Work the permutations, work the calculations out. Apiculture by itself can help us address the environmental problems we have in St. Lucia. And but when we are successful, and I'm telling you that not because I am thinking we will do it, we've already done it in a project in St. Lucia. One of our projects already have apitoxins stored. So what we are going to do, we are going to upscale this at $150,000 level. In fact, the project we are thinking of is going to cost somewhere around $600,000 and it will involve Trinidad, St. Vincent, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, and across the oceans to Samoa. Transoceanic apiculture project and biodiversity. We are also going to create a research and learning laboratory in St. Lucia where people can come and learn about apiculture, the science of apiculture. We want this to happen within the next 2 years, and we are going to push this as much as possible. And we're going to launch this project hopefully in the next 3 weeks or so. The other project is Climate Smart Agriculture, Organic Farming and Health. We are hoping some of our projects would reach that level. We have just funded a major project in organic herbs in St. Lucia for medicinal purposes, and we are in the process of creating a partnership between the medical fraternity and a group on the east coast of St. Lucia. That should bear significant benefits, just like the women of Mauritius, where they have created a network for medicinal herbs and are now export to the European Union after vacuum packing those herbs in appropriate containers. Community-based management of areas for conservation and livelihoods. We are looking at 2 possible areas in the Upper Fosse Jacques area. We hope we can move towards the establishment of an agro-tourism park, and we're going to propose to the government of St. Lucia that the hinterland of Canaries, you see, Canaries has been poor. Perhaps one of the reasons is because we have not discovered a comparative advantage in that community, and we need to begin to do that. And we believe if we create a research hub in that area, in the hinterland of Canaries, we can do it. And there are a number of organizations we are going to be contacting to see what is possible. So if the government of St. Lucia can look at the possibility of a national park in the hinterland, it's going to be good for trails, but also good for research, particularly in hepatology and other such areas. Sustainable cities, what are we going to do? We are going to promote discussions, dialogues on the issues, challenges of communities. Green belts and urban forestry, we are going to look at this with the forestry department to implement. The issue of solid waste and energy conservation will be of significance for us, and the pedestrianization in certain parts of St. Lucia. We would like to see little young groups of men and women, or men alone or women alone, who can develop an interest in any one of those areas and work with us. We'd fund the projects. We'd mentor them, and hopefully they become viable and successful projects over time. Other components of the country program strategy will include a communications plan. We have to go out there and begin to do some more aggressive resource mobilization and partnership development. We have started that with the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism, the St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association. We are doing that with ICA and others. Risk management is important these days, monitoring and evaluation, and the all-important learning. How much resources do we have over the next 4 years? We are projecting an investment of 6.48 million Eastern Caribbean dollars. We are getting $200,000 from the government's allocation of its star resources to St. Lucia, and from our central office in New York, we will get a minimum of $250,000 every year for the next 4 years. That's the minimum. For this to happen, as our dear chair says, we need NGOs that are vibrant, that would rise and come to us for the funding, that would implement the projects on time, that would document the results so that they can have a rapid turnaround. Right now, because of the issues in the environment, the climate change and so on, there's a desperation entering the narrative now. Because we see it, we see the permafrost in the northern climes melting away. Antarctica is melting. We see the acidification of the oceans, and so on. We need NGOs that can think creatively, do the research, innovate. And they do not do it alone, they will do it with our assistance. We are within a global family of 124 countries. And I want to submit to you that if there's a problem in project implementation, there must be somebody in 124 countries who can help us in that respect. So when you come to us and we approve, our National Steering Committee approves our project, we are telling you, welcome to a global family. And if you have any issues, we can assist you in addressing those issues. This is what we offer: technical support, financial support, and mentoring. In our conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we need to work together to find ways to increase the absorptive capacity of project funds in St. Lucia. There is funding out there. By building the institutional landscape for CSOs and integrating research and innovation into the way of thinking and implementing projects. Then we must transition to substantially funding our future. I believe that if we can get projects that are viable and we fund them, I believe we can raise ourselves on this cultural confidence that me and Motley spoke about, in such a way that this small country can become a champion country, not only in the Eastern Caribbean, but in the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Romulus, for this very thorough presentation. It's quite a lot in this era of bite-sized information, quite a lot for us to consider, but I'm sure that this information would be available from the NSC office, if you so desire. Let me remind you that the theme, as Mr. Romulus indicated for the GEF-7 program, is research and innovation for sustainable development in the Anthropocene era. Now, you would have to understand why that contextual information comes to you, because as a geologist, as a geographer, as an urban planner, Mr. Romulus would have used these sorts of frames. Other economists probably would use revolutions, industrial revolutions. Depending on what profession you came from, you may use different contexts. But the point remains that innovation and research are the basis of finding solutions for our problems. Let me recognize Mr. Joachim Henry, who has joined us. Mr. Henry is representing the leader of the opposition, and all of you who have joined us since the start, we want to welcome you as well. We do expect the Minister of Education to join us shortly, but we'll move on to the other aspect of the program while we await the arrival of the Minister. And I would invite Mr. Romulus again to the podium to present checks to 3 grantees: the Soufriere Marine Management Association, Raise Your Voice, and the St. Lucia Civil Service Workers Multipurpose Cooperative Society.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. Let me just bring up this. No, I'm trying to. What's happening? Which one? I can't. That's frozen. It's not working now.
Which one?
No, I can't get the cursor. Here you go. Where is it? Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do today, what we're going to do now is to present to you 3 projects that we approved recently for funding in St. Lucia. We will first call on the representative of the Civil Service Workers Multipurpose Cooperative Society Limited. That group will focus on cassava production over the next 2 years. They are going to not only plant the cassava, harvest the cassava, but create an agro-processing enterprise out of it. They intend to sell it to their members, but also to their customers around St. Lucia. The total budget is $75,544 US, and we are contributing $35,377 to that, with cash co-funding of $7,359 and in-kind co-funding at $32,808. Remember, cassava has a low glycemic index, and remember, it is nourishing, and it is out of our soils. It has come from pre-Columbian days to the present. Ladies and gentlemen, let us recognize the St. Lucia Civil Service Workers Multipurpose Cooperative Society Limited. Thank you very much. The next project comes from Raise Your Voice St. Lucia Incorporated, Ms. Catherine Silas. Here again, this project comes from the issue of marginalization of women, the issue of the brutalization of women. You see, I am being brought up by a mother, and I understand those things very well. And what Catherine and her group has done is to approach this from the economic and the empowerment angle, but also attract to that such things as reduction of carbon footprint, such things as rainwater harvesting, and such things as capacity development for confidence. And therefore, this is a significant project. The government of St. Lucia is contributing land to that project, and Catherine and her group has been able to attract a significant grant from the Inter-American Foundation. The project will cost $404,377 US. Our contribution is $50,000 US, and cash co-funding of $304,111 US will come from the IAF and several other donors, and in-kind co-funding of $130,266. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2 years' time, the agro-processing enterprise of this women's group will be bringing at least 3 products to market. Ladies and gentlemen, Catherine Sills. And the last but by no means least is the Soufriere Marine Management Association. I see Mr. Duveau is coming forward. He's a member of the board of the SMMA. The problem I spoke to in my presentation about pollution or water contamination in Soufriere We need to address this problem as soon as possible. We need to address it in a definitive way. And this project, as it is called, addressing the water quality issues faced in the Soufriere watershed, not just the coastal zone, and the Soufriere Bay, by strengthening policies, water quality monitoring, and fostering community awareness. This project will look at the policy framework for the management of water systems in Soufriere. It will revise the fisheries regulations and also revise the statutes that have led to the establishment of the SMME. It will do some training, and it will also develop a permanent monitoring system. I've always said in Soufriere, if there is one indicator that tells you what the quality of the environment is the quality of water. The total budget is $150,604 US. GEF-SGP will be contributing $42,407 US. Cash co-funding of 68,030 US, in-kind co-funding of 50,166. Mr. DeVoe, thank you. Let's recognize Mr. DeVoe. Here ends the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Romulus, and thank you, grantees, for joining us for this presentation. We have one addition to the program, which is the presentation of the Castries Declaration. Mr. Romulus?
Thank you, Mrs. Master Ceremonies. The Castries Declaration came out of our knowledge fair some 2 years ago. We met in Parliament and we focused on quality soils, quality food, and health. And out of that came a draft declaration which we actually put online for signatures. At the time of printing that declaration on Friday, we were somewhere around 2,800 signatures. This declaration speaks to the challenges we face for food security, nutritional quality in St. Lucia. It makes recommendations on how we as a nation should address the situation, and it is the collective output of a number of persons in the Parliament, including doctors and lawyers and taxi drivers and persons in agronomy and agriculture. Our chair will be reading a short section from this declaration, and thereafter, I see the minister is not here. A presentation will be made to Mr. Joachim Henry on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition. Madam Chair.
Our declaration read as follows. Whereas on the 10th day of December 2018, a cross-section of St. Lucians met in the Parliament chamber in the city of Castries in St. Lucia at the People's Forum to discuss issues and raise awareness about the integral relationship between a healthy environment, the use and effect of harmful chemicals in the farm-to-table food chain, the benefits of an organic way of farming and eating, and the need for research and innovation to address these issues under the banner From the Soil and Water to the Palate, a Healthy Journey. And whereas this theme signals a national concern for the state of our environment and the health of the people of St. Lucia, and in particular for the growing incidences of non-communicable diseases, including cancers, we invite all St. Lucians, civil society, community-based organizations, the differently abled, and the media to assist in driving the change to a sustainable and healthy food production. We commit to working together to improve the quality of the environment, paying attention to conservation, recycling, and sustainable practices, and to include some physical activity in our daily lives to to combat NCDs and to ensure the security of our health. This declaration was prepared and approved in the Parliament Chamber in St. Lucia on the 10th day of December 2018 at the People's Forum and presented to St. Lucians for support and endorsement. And now we give a copy, we present a copy to the leader of the representative of the leader of the opposition. On behalf of the minister, we'll give a copy to Ms. Lynelle Malze. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next item on our program is the launch of a book, an introductory guide to organic fertilizers and pesticides, safer and healthy alternatives for all. And we have a few brief remarks from individuals who have been involved in that project. Let me first invite Mr. Felix Herman, President of Bellevue Farmers Group, Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, to deliver a few remarks. Mr. Herman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. I would like to adopt the protocols already established and to say how pleased I am on behalf of Bellevue Farmers Cooperative to stand here this morning to what I consider to be history in the making. Why history? Because through the GEF-SGP UNDP project, we are now today presenting you for the first time a book on removing toxic chemicals from the environment. Let me, ladies and gentlemen, bring you the genesis as far as the production of this book is concerned. I remember many years ago, as a boy, going to my parents' farm and literally pulling out caterpillar from cabbages. Later, we saw the introduction of various chemicals. But at that time, ladies and gentlemen, it was not store-bought chemicals, but chemicals made by our own households, using local knowledge. So I was so pleased when Mr. Romulus in his presentations spoke about New Motley, talking about the culture. And later down the road, I happened to have found myself being acquainted with a gentleman by the name of Coco Charles, Gabriel Charles. And I remember Mr. Charles saying to me, Mr. Herman, no, he didn't say Mr. Herman because my father was a forester, Lawrence Antoine. He used to call me Little Lawrence. He used to say to me, Mr. Little Lawrence, the day would come when farming would become so difficult. The day would come when food, which is supposed to sustain life, would become a threat to life itself. I never understood this at the time. But later down the road, as I got myself involved in working as an agricultural teacher, I then understood what he was talking about. And this project, Transitioning, that brought this book from toxic chemicals to non-toxic chemicals through research, demonstration plots, innovation, is the result of that type of a bringing that I had had, because at that time, serving at Bellevue Farmers Cooperative, I became convinced in my mind that if we were going to have a healthy country, the only way out was to produce healthy food. And the only way you can produce healthy food is if you grow the food with things that are healthy, including the protection of the food by chemicals. With this idea in mind, I met with my good friend, Mr. Romulus. I hope one of these days we can give him an OB. I think he's deserving of it. And we started talking about what it is we can do together. And this idea came up. You know where it came from? Because I went to a school one day, because at that time I was working with the Ministry of Education for a school feeding program responsible for setting up greenhouses in the school and training up teachers. And when I got there, ladies and gentlemen, what I saw was the teacher, well covered, clothed, spraying agrochemicals, and a few minutes later, the students are walking into that garden. It means that the residue, the fume, these kids are walking right into it without protection. Now, I want to state that these young minds, these young bodies, being exposed to the heavy toxicity of those chemicals at such an early age can sometimes have devastating effect as it relates to fertility. And even when it may not affect fertility in terms of production, then the health of the infant that is being born is definitely affected because of exposure to chemicals at very early ages. We were also convinced, having gone through the research, to see that many countries had suffered from many health issues, especially those countries that were heavily dependent on bananas. The rise of cancers, and working with the Ministry of Health, we were also able to discover an increase in intestinal and stomach cancers in this country. And we can only link that it might and possibly be the food that we eat. So this project, Transitioning, was of 3 parts. One, we ran a toxicology workshop for over 120 persons within the country in all sectors of the economy. Very successful. The report is available. 2, we started training, and the training was based on the theme, soil health is human wealth. Why that theme? Because unless your soil is kept healthy, then the food you produce from the soil is automatically not going to be healthy. And soil takes time, and Mr. Romulus will tell you that it takes a long time for soil to be developed. And we can destroy it within days, I say now. The training went to a number of secondary schools, and the training involved how to keep your soil healthy, but more importantly, with a partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture, we experimented with a number of innovations, use of local plants to create pesticides that were able to treat agricultural produce, the cabbage, the carrots, the tomatoes, plants that were used many years ago in medicines. For example, guava. Many of you here, those as old as me, would remember when you have a stomach problem, if a diarrhea, you just had a few young guava leaves and you are better within a few hours. What was it taking care of? These experiments, ladies and gentlemen, were so successful during our research that even if initially the book was not in mind, but we felt that the effort that Jeff had put into that project and the manner in which it had gone through and where it had reached, it was important to leave a footprint. And this footprint is to tell us as St. Lucians that we cannot as a nation develop by staying conformed. If we are to develop and if we are going to make progress, we have to have a transformative mindset and thinking. And this booklet is a result of a transformative mindset and thinking to put something in the hands of our farmers and the community at large, a document that will change the lives and health of our people for generations to come. The health of the country is dependent on a healthy workforce. And if people are not healthy, you cannot be productive. Spending hours and hours on sick leave and in bed and in hospitals with the mega resources that we have available to us will cause a downgrade in our productivity. But with the launch of this booklet today and a reduction in the toxic chemicals, we will see a change. Later on in my life, ladies and gentlemen, having been influenced by Mr. Gabriel Charles, I had another mentor that is very much part of this book today in the person of Dr. Barbara Graham. In her days at ICA, and my interaction with her, thank you, caused me to be even more convinced of the way to go. I am hoping that with this, it will not remain in boxes, but we have a plan. And I'm so glad Mr. Henry is here, because we will be making presentations to all 17 members of Parliament. Why? It is because we are hoping that they will adopt this book as a document for the schools and farming community in this country. It's a well-presented document, and I want to thank Mr. Doxury for producing it. Great work, Mr. Doxury. We are hoping that every school child, especially at the level of the secondary school, will carry one of these as part of his books. And I'm hoping, and my plan is, from the Bellevue perspective, working with Jeff and our partner, the Hotel and Tourism Association, we will launch a special committee. We are hoping that we'll be able to speak to the government. We are moving into a very special season. And I plan, and Bellevue, and I'm sure Jeff will be that the document can form part of the forward movement in terms of how they plan to promote agriculture in this country. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we were not convinced years ago, now we have to be convinced because we've seen what COVID has done. More persons were planting in the backyard. More persons were planting in the home. And how can you use toxic chemicals in your backyard where you have small children and pets? You're putting yourself at risk. You're putting your family at risk. This document will enable us as families to produce the chemicals that we need to treat the things that we are planting. And moreover, a brand new industry can be created from it because all the materials that are required have to be grown. Earlier, Mr. Romulus alluded to a group that will be doing medicinal herbs. We will expand, they can expand from medicinal herbs to the plants and herbs required to produce those chemicals. One of the initiatives I have in mind is to speak while we will make the presentation to the 17 parliamentarians, to ask each one of them to make a commitment to purchase at least 250 for a constituency out of the funding that they receive through the CDP project. If this can be considered, ladies and gentlemen, it means that what we will see is a transformation of the way development is considered. Because this booklet, the 250 that they receive, can be provided to the farmers in the community. Because we have a serious, serious issue of land degradation and water pollution, directly linked, and Dr. Abraham, you've worked for many years on this, on the level of toxicity within the soil system. And we are so fortunate today to be forming what I consider to be one of the greatest partnerships of all time in the history of this country. The farmers and the hoteliers are coming together to introduce to this country a transformative document that will change the way we produce for life. It can improve the tourism product that we offer because now we will offer something brand new, that when you are in St. Lucia, you eat only organic. It will provide the means and drive to push the organic farmers, because no longer will they be searching at what to do, but they will have it in their hands. The material in there, ladies and gentlemen, can create industries. So in a few years' time, it can be found on the shelves, in stores. What I see is that as a judge of the science fair for many years, I have seen a drop in projects as well as little or no innovations. So I'm hoping that if we can put this in the hand of the students, during the science fair, we can see some of the products up for the science fair. One might say that's being ambitious. But you know, unless we go out of the box, unless we think out of the box, we have no one to think for us, ladies and gentlemen. We have to think for ourselves. And we have to come up with a new plan, a new thinking, a new mindset. That is where we have this document. And I'm so pleased, Mr. Romulus, that we had not launched it earlier. And that today we have the opportunity to launch it on a bigger platform, both virtual and physical. I have no doubt in my mind, and Mr. Henry, you will remember, in your days as SSDF, we had begun some formative work on this. Mr. Romulus, one of the, through that project's transitioning, one of the areas that we touched on was the use of grey water. The GEF project transitioning from toxic to non-toxic. We actually did a number of experiments on grey water, the use of grey water. And what did we find is it is very possible, and we actually performed the experiments and we tested and we used to grow plants, and that was very successful. Mr. Charles had said to me, little Lawrence, production will change one of these days, and now I see it. Because we have, no longer can we rely on the rains for production. When it's not there, it's not there. But when it's there, it is too heavy. And because it is too heavy, it destroys what we have. So we have moved into the greenhouses. But ladies and gentlemen, when you spray a toxic chemical in a greenhouse, how is it possible for the chemical to be washed out? It doesn't. It stays in there. I'm not trying to scare you. The point that I'm making is, because of the means to produce in a sheltered environment, we now have to transform to using material that is not toxic. We are now seeing dozens of pumps on our rivers, and I know that concerns you, Mr. Romulus, especially in the dry season. All the more because no longer do they use the sprinkler overhead. That is why this document is so important, because in the dry season, when you do not have the rains to lessen the lifespan of the chemical on the plants, you can have something that is less toxic and less deadly to our very life and existence. So in conclusion, today, 9th November 2020, on behalf of GEF-SGP, Ministry of Agriculture and Bellevue, we declare this document an official document of this country to be used for the production of non-toxic chemicals in our food system. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Homan. Good morning, Dr. Rigobert. Just let me welcome the Minister of Education who's just joined us. And we will just take you through the two sets of brief remarks related to this item before we invite the Minister to the podium. Yeah, it's okay? Yeah. Okay, so let me invite Mr. Noorani Aziz first, Chief Executive Officer of the SLHTA. And immediately following Mr. Aziz would be Dr. Barbara Graham, former chair of the NSC, who would provide some brief remarks related to the project on the book on natural fertilizers and pesticides. Mr. Aziz?
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to adopt the standing protocol, but add the Honorable Minister's name to the list. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of the SLHTA to be with you all here today. At this launch of the 7th operational program of the Global Environment Facility Small Grants Program in St. Lucia, and the launch of our organic fertilizer book. I bring with me warm greetings from our esteemed Board of Directors of the SLHTA. In particular, our President, Mrs. Carolyn Trubetskoy, whose unwavering support for the collaboration which the GEF and the SLHTA have embarked upon some years ago, and which continues to move from strength to strength. Since signing our letter of collaboration between the SLHTA and GEF some time ago, we were very delighted to have been invited to participate in the publication of the Introductory Guide to Organic Fertilizers and Pesticides. I wish to highly commend the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative and the supporting schools and farmers for their exemplary efforts at research and compilation of the information presented in the booklet. Our nation owes you a debt of gratitude for your vigilance and your employment of these organic crop production practices, which will augur well for the health of our nation. In an age when the temptation is so great to use unnatural means to augment crop production, your resilience and commitment to pursue organic ways of fertilizing and reducing pests will do its fair part in supporting the health and well-being of our children and their communities. Earlier, Mr. Romulus spoke of meta problems, was it? So now we have the motivation to create meta human beings with meta minds to address these meta problems. And notwithstanding their size and complexity, I often marvel at the ability to apply simple solutions to start paving the way to addressing these issues brought about by these complex global challenges. The well-being of these communities are not only physical, mental, and emotional, but it's very important that we focus on their economic resilience. For production is only the beginning. Consumption is also very critical. To my mind, this is where the private sector can provide the greatest support. Understanding the market forces that inspire production quality, dependability of supply, and wealth creation are key to business relationships between agriculture and other sectors. For many years now, we have wondered why the tourism industry continues to grow in terms of numbers from strength to strength, but notwithstanding that, we see the contraction of the farming or the agricultural sector. And a number of years ago, the SLHTA sought to understand more clearly why this ever-growing gap was an experience that we just couldn't seem to solve in a major way. And after speaking with about 100 farmers and a number of operators within the industry, we too made a very small, simple-minded attempt to try to address the issue, which to our mind was the absence of information and the absence of data that to inform what each side was doing. From our perch, it seemed that the industry did not have a good sense of what was being produced. And from the farming perspective, from the farmer's perspective, they had no idea what the demand was like. And through a very simple WhatsApp-based platform, we simply sought to tell the farmers what was in demand. And when these crops reached the market and they were ready for harvesting, we informed the hoteliers of what was available. And we encouraged and facilitated exchange and trade off of the platform. And a little simple project that was just designed to perhaps engage 100 farmers and 10 companies over the span of a year saw the participation of over 425 farmers and over 21 different hotel operators. And we saw the movement of over $1 million worth of agricultural produce from farmers to hotels in the space of 12 months. This was a paradigm-shifting experience for us within the industry. And we realized that if we're to succeed and move forward and make a meaningful difference, then information sharing is a very critical part of that equation. We must communicate. It is our wish as the hospitality sector that the government's initiative to push ahead with the 7 crop production plan will be a successful one, as it is a step in our minds in the right direction to help reduce our food import bill, which is growing by the minute, and to test our capacity for real mass production. Non-traditional crop production is also a trending discussion, and a number of our local manufacturers are leading the way in agro-processing. I was really encouraged to hear your thoughts, Mr. Romulus, on how we can reduce their cost of operations, which within our environment is a real factor that challenges our ability to upscale and to meet the demand on a timely basis. The SLHTA is firm in our commitment to these partnerships because we know if done correctly and if done properly, they can usher in a fresh wave of opportunities for economic diversification, healthcare cost reduction, improved productivity, and make our communities more resilient to economic shocks. It's easy to jump online and do a search and to see what best practices are employed across the globe. What we must do right now is find or identify and find those practices which have the best applications to meeting our needs and bridging the gaps that exist in our island economy. To Mr. Romulus and his esteemed group of advisors and directors at GEF, I salute you all. Well done. The SLHTA is grateful for your efforts at tackling these challenges, as big and as insurmountable as they may seem, and by doing so, engendering hope, inspiring action, and attaining success with real results. We stand as your partners in arms, as you function, to my mind, as what is the tip of the spear in mobilizing our communities and pulling together very scarce resources to make these shifts that we're trying to create. We are pleased to have supported the GEF's Knowledge Fair in 2018. In supporting the Castries Declaration, and signing a letter of collaboration in 2019, and now providing financial support for the publication of over 500 copies of St. Lucia's first introductory guide to organic fertilizers and pesticides, prepared by the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative through your small grants. It is clear that partnership works and that many hands make light work. Let us now commit to getting all this knowledge and these practices into the hands of every St. Lucian, empowering them with knowledge to make informed choices. Let us, as servants of these great public and private sector institutions, continue to fan the flames of passion, to harness every resource available, which will give our people the advantage so desperately needed in this new world that we have been tossed into this year. Thank you all once again for the privilege and the honor to support your great work. Thank you.
Dr. Graham, I'll have to put you on hold for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Minister of Education, Innovation, Gender Relations, and Sustainable Development, Dr. Gail Rigobert, to address us. Dr. Rigobert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow, I'm in such esteemed company. Former Governor General of St. Lucia, Dame Paulette Louise, Chair of the National Steering Committee, GEF-SGP UNDP, Dr. Rosemary Husbands, my dear friend Giles Romulus, and other distinguished friends and invited guests, good morning. Distinguished guests here and in the virtual world, I offer warm greetings to you this morning as we herald the 7th operational program of the Global Environmental Facility Small Grants Program of the United Nations Development Program here in St. Lucia. This event has caused me to flash back to February 18th, 2019, where in this very space, I declared the launch of the Decade of Research and Innovation under the theme, Unleashing Our Creativity, Crafting Our Destiny. A challenge offered and accepted through the GEF-SGP UNDP. The sentiments which I held then are even stronger today as we lay the columns that will flash us forward to crafting a St. Lucia that surpasses our creative best at this time. 1 year later, we inched even closer to the goal, supported by this 7th operational program, with a focus on research and innovation. Coincidental? The number 7 has deep significance, in fact, deep philosophical and spiritual significance. It denotes perfection, completeness, cogence. Hence, this is a very poignant moment as the articulated ambitions for the Decade of Research and Innovation begin to unfold. When I, on behalf of the government of St. Lucia, declared that the Decade of Research and Innovation envisaged the following: 1, to stimulate a culture of innovative scientific thinking and analysis accentuated by nationally driven research orchestrated to offer sustainable solutions through evidence-based decision-making to our manifold socioeconomic challenges, a situation which is now compounded by the advent of COVID-19 and the existential challenges of climate change that presently threaten the quality of our future. To significantly augment our capacity and ability as a small island state to respond to and offer solutions to issues that impact us and others alike in the area of agriculture, education, business development, climate change, natural disasters, health, and wellness. The warring uncertainties of our times have diversified opportunities and solutions which we can bring to not only St. Lucia, but the wider world. The 6th operational program has triggered the emergence of a trending apiculture industry, sustainable agro-processing initiatives, high-tech farming solutions, enclosed systems with IT and organic methods, sustainable tourism as well as alternative energy within sustainable production systems. As Minister with responsibility for education, innovation, gender relations, and sustainable development, my focus is and has been on moving the aggregates of making the bold, informed, and decisive actions, moving beyond decisions to actions today, to create the livable future of tomorrow. Our government is making enormous efforts to catch up with the developments and standards where they relate to research and innovation. And I remain committed to the bold hashtag of the Department of Education, Innovation, and Gender Relations, which is that of hashtag making it happen. I continue to work towards the fulfillment of aspiration for innovation hubs and ecosystems to support the exploits of our emerging entrepreneurs, both young and old. With confidence, I can report that before the dawn of 2021, St. Lucia will have a science, technology, and innovation policy to herald and support the actionable steps toward the creation of a sustainable nation, a sustainable future for all in our beautiful St. Lucia. I therefore wish to laud the efforts of the NCPC and Invest St. Lucia as we continue collectively to cut through the silos to create the nexus for growth in industry and research and innovation. Of note, too, are the efforts of the Vaughan A. Lewis Institute for Research and Innovation, known colloquially as VALIRI, and the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, where a culture of high efficiency is in sight, where our learning and research institutions reach a standard in pure and applied research, which is shared and transferred to the business and industry, or to business and industry over time, with the full recognition and protection of intellectual property rights. To this end, I look forward to the tremendous growth in academia through more publications, doctoral work, and professional or specialized portfolios as we move towards becoming global leaders in top-level research and development. And Giles, you know how fond I am of the knowledge fair in that regard, an important impetus in realizing that ambition. Our united efforts now, ladies and gentlemen, are of paramount importance, because we have come to understand that in the absence of raw materials such as diamonds and gold, what we do have is our intellect, our culture, our heritage, our people. We have produced 2 world-class laureates, so we know that we can climb the highest mountains in terms of accomplishments because of the quality of our human resources. And every time I reference that accomplishment, I hasten to add that we should not reference it as if it is that we've reached our maximum carrying capacity as it pertains to Nobel laureates. And the ambition should always remain that we produce some more. So I must say that yet again. I believe that on its completion, this 7th operational program phase of the GEF-SGP UNDP will bring a baseline of success which is reliant on our creativity, innovation, education, and research. We need to see the opportunity there could be and reorganize the way we work, and to do so with urgency. The world is changing very fast right before our eyes. Chris Grosser once said, Opportunity doesn't happen. You create opportunity. So permit me to do some forecasting and to indicate that what we are doing here is consciously, purposely, deliberately seeking to create opportunity. With this launch of the 7th operational program of the GEF-SGP UNDP, I see a nation that facilitates demand-driven research and innovation. St. Lucia can and will become the regional leader and set the precedent in the Americas for research and innovation, supported by very brilliant people, talented people who are deliberate in their actions about being truth finders and innovators. Research and innovation will find its confidence in our culture, and we will not shrink from any challenge of the future. That the value added to products and services, through our groundbreaking work in research and innovation, will see St. Lucia being recognized as a learning hub, a learning nation. We anticipate a day when research and innovation will permeate all sections of society and become part of our everyday parlance. From the farmer on the banks of the Chumasay River, from where I hail, to the tour guide on the zenith of the Pitons, from the seamoss farmers on the shoreline of Poile Bay to the scholars in the innovation lab on the Moon, and from the vendors in the city of Castries to the culinary experts at Jade Mountain. All St. Lucians will embrace the call, the movement that will transform our society into a place of learning and innovation. Today we have launched the publication by the farmers of Bellevue, and congratulations. That is an example of innovation. In the digitalized workshops of Furniture City, right there in my backyard in Lombard in Mico North, the expansion of Baron Foods offerings and augmented teaching modality that our students now follow, all of which are shifting our mindsets and bringing to the fore the new mission. When I declared the decade of research and innovation, it was with this end in mind, that during my tenure as Minister for Education, Innovation, and Gender Relations, that we as a nation would adopt the scientific mode of thinking versus the YOD mode of thinking. The scientific mode of thinking to overcome the challenges that will confront us now and in the future. This desired trend, this aspiration, is no longer optional, colleagues. It is imperative. We will and we must. On behalf of my Prime Minister and Cabinet colleagues, I wish you well, congratulations, and continue the awesome work that you've been doing in the interest of the people of this nation, our beautiful island. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Felix, is this? It's on? Thank you very much, Dr. Rigobert. And GEF-SGP UNDP normally does not ask you to do anything without rewarding. We'll reward you with a copy of the book which is just launched. And let me ask Mr. Herman to make a presentation to you. I trust the photographers would want to. He's going to autograph it, so you're first on the block to get a signed copy. For those of you who are on virtually, we're just witnessing Mr. Herman, who was one of the project initiators, signing the book, and he'll first present a copy to Dr. Rigobert. This is done by the chair of the NSC, Ms. Dr. Matre. Thank you. And in our true spirit of Western parliamentary democracy, we would invite the leader of the opposition's representative to follow through. Thank you very much, Dr. Rigobert. Thank you. Mr. Joachim Henry, to receive a copy on behalf of the leader of the opposition, presented by Dr. Rosemary Matre. Thank you. Yes, we would now like to acknowledge Dr. Rigobert as she takes a leave to attend to matters of government or state. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue for our proceedings, and Dr. Graham, I know you've been waiting patiently. All of you have been waiting. And we now have some brief remarks from Dr. Barbara Graham, former chair of the NSC, GEF-SGP UNDP. Dr. Graham?
Thank you, everyone. I would like to accept the protocols which have been established, but I would also like to recognize former Governor General Dame Pearlette Louise. Thank you. You saw me doing this, and I need to explain. I am nearsighted, but I cannot see with a mask and my glasses. So I may have to remove the mask. Thank you. I've been asked to speak very briefly and specific to the document, the publication, and I've been asked to do it in 5 minutes. So I have 4.5 minutes to go. I have noticed that the document focuses on organic fertilizers and pesticides, and we have listened to the presentations before. But I would like to broaden the context a little bit, and then towards Giles' presentation, Mr. Romulus, in terms of putting it in the context of climate change and climate variability, and then take it back to the local situation. When I opened the book, which was the first page, the acknowledgement, it brought to the forefront the ongoing strategies, practices, and projects and participatory approaches to resilient farming systems for sustained productivity and sustainable livelihoods in St. Lucia and globally. It focuses on the health of the environment, or more specifically, the agroecosystem, soil, water, and microecosystems. And it will, in this regard, it will positively impact a healthy food production system, as the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative indicated earlier. An overriding element to organic soils and management of pests and diseases is, in fact, climate change, or the threats of climate change and climate variability. So one of the good things about this document is that it is a timely reminder that although up to 6 months ago, our top priority was how to build adaptive capacities in the sector, agriculture sector, against climate change and climate variability, we have been a little bit distracted by the pandemic, and that is well understood. We're talking about lives. What I'm saying is, while we can be hopeful that the pandemic will be managed, it has been managed before. In terms of CC, climate change and climate variability, we have not seen that promise from the global perspective or the local perspective based on the uncertainties of climate change and climate variability. In this regard, the BVF Cooperative and the GEF-St. Lucia must be commended for bringing home the first publication that drives the links within the natural environment, that binds its natural resources in agroecosystems, small farming systems, and a nutritionally healthy food-based system within the context of the predictions of climate change and climate variability. This is of significance as climate change, the dominant state factor in agroecosystems, has added a new dimension to the resilience or the considerations for resilience in the farming systems. Based on predictions, natural resources in agroecosystems are likely to change as climate itself changes with uncertainties in rainfall amounts, temperature regimes, and soils. Based on the geography and topography, based mainly on geography and topography, agroecosystem provides the natural resources for sustainability of the farming system. We in St. Lucia have observed, recorded, and reported through the St. Lucia National Communications, the UNFCCC, predictions of likely negative impacts of climate change and climate variability, particularly as it relates to peaks in annual rainfall, long droughts, and unpredictable droughts during the seasonal wet periods. Building resilience in farming systems is therefore a priority for our country. As such, most, if not all persons in this room would be aware of current policies, strategies, and ongoing projects to build resilient farming systems in St. Lucia. Against this background, on the importance and the contribution and the potential impact of the manual prepared by the BVFC on organic farming emerged very early. If I may say that again, against this background, my thoughts on the importance, contribution, and the potential impact of the manual prepared by the Bellevue Farmers Cooperative on organic farming emerged very early. In fact, I was somewhat surprised that somewhere on the first page, the manual was described as a simple manual. I stopped for a while and I thought about it, because just reading that first page, I did not see a simple manual. And I hope that you'll agree with me in the next 4 minutes. First and foremost, the geography, topography, and soils make our island system, and in particular, the location of the large majority of our farms, increasingly vulnerable to climate change and climate variability. In this regard, building adaptive capacities for organic soils and farming systems is a pathway to resilient farming, perhaps the only pathway to resilient farming, with the likely predictions on the impact of climate change and climate variability on sustainable farms. The focus of the BVFC is correct, as soils built on organic matter are not only highly fertile because of the extent with which they release nutrients for growth, as well as produce healthier food. Of extreme importance for St. Lucia is that these soils function best because of their high soil water holding capacity, the ability to hold this water for longer periods. They do not erode easily during high rainfall peak events such as we have in St. Lucia. The fact that access to soil water as required for plant growth and food or forage and forage production can be a challenge for farmers, our farmers, due to unexpected dry days, even in excess of as little as 5 days. We immediately bring our minds to thinking how very important it is to build soils or resilience in soils, soils that are resilient, particularly because of high water holding capacity and because of the fact that they can hold the water for a longer period, and they do not erode easily when we have our peaks in rainfall. Widely practiced and with less erosion and higher and longer water holding capacity, we could add reduced soil runoff into our rivers and coastline with the likelihood of less pollution of our waterways. And we listened to Mr. I'm a little embarrassed, Herman. Forgive me, there's a little bit of age up here as well, Mr. Herman. And waterways, as he spoke of the toxicity of our waters. Notably, the manual provides many different on-farm organic matter production methods appropriate to the different socioeconomic and sociological circumstances of the farming systems. Much of the material for now is readily available, but with demand, consistent access to material for building soil could require better organization and coordination, including protected or conservation areas for selected plant species. The participatory approach to building adaptive capacities within the farm household was evident as well. This is important as reportedly resilient farming systems are demonstrated in the capacity of the farm and the farm household within the system, not just what happens on the farm, but the capacities, adaptive capacities within the persons involved, the farmers, is very important. So resilient farming systems, meaning the farm household has to be considered. They are considered in the document as being the ones most likely to recover not only from the environmental shocks from climate change or climate variability, but also from economic and social shocks. Hence, the publication also takes into consideration the socio-economic and sociological circumstances of small farmers, in that the inputs are often of no cost to the farmer or at much reduced cost. However, it must be borne in mind that as demand for the practice grows, and I support Mr. Herman that we will see if we are deliberate and work towards this, we will see the demand for the practice growing. A more coordinated approach to consistent supply of genetic material for the organic matter must be in place to ensure sustainable development in the demand for food and forage. So what we are saying is no building of resilience in soils against the impact of climate change, no guarantee of sustainable development to meet our demand for food and forage. This is one of the reasons why I chose to focus on the organic building for resilience in soil. This needs to be addressed in a timely manner, and I'll come back to it quickly. For resilience with no evidence of creeping vulnerability, and this is something we have to be very careful about when we talk about building resilience. Any weaknesses which begins to become evident, to show itself, needs to be dealt with very quickly, because we can quickly fall back into vulnerability. So, for example, the situation here where we must at all times keep focus on, do we have the regeneration or generation of the material that we need to build the resilience in organic soils? Building of organic soils will therefore have to be consistent for plant growth as well as for forage in agroecosystems, or as we often more frequently refer to as the farming systems. This could mean more intensive interaction within the farming systems, as well as with the Department of Forestry, as the demand for plant genetic material may require protected or conservation areas for ongoing access to material as demand grows. It will also mean ongoing research as new materials are identified and tested. The continued role of the Departments of Extension Services and also the Research and the Development Unit of the Ministry of Agriculture are therefore foreseen. The soil testing for nutrient content and for soil water holding capacity of the built soil must continue with strong participation at the farm level to ensure that farmers are following the methods of production as so well prescribed in the organic manual, and there is no evidence of a tendency towards favoring chemical fertilizers. And this is important because the growth of the curve in building organic soils does not do that. It does that. And we don't want the farming system to become discouraged in terms of production and productivity as they wait on the process to get to that stage where research has shown that they will get beyond the chemical fertilizers curve and flatten there. It is therefore recommended that the link already established with the Farmer Field School program of the Ministry of Agriculture continue in a matter that the burden of dissemination and necessary quality control does not rest entirely with the BVFC or the farming community as such. This is particularly important as the building of organic soil in the farming system takes time to reach the level of production and foreseen productivity, and could in the early stages require the controlled and managed use of fertilizers as the building process continues towards higher levels of production. Researchers show that the curve is slow at the beginning, but can eventually exceed and flatten above the level of chemical fertilizers. Hence, the research process and development must continue, including farm records of dedicated farmers. farmers will need to be encouraged in this process. Probably have another minute. There's the well-established benefits to human health are very clear in the document, and by extension to improved food security and sustainable livelihoods. It is therefore a publication which should be, or consideration should be given to the document as a reference or a guide in all projects for increased adaptive capacities for resilient farming for food or forage. And this should be promoted, as Mr. Herman said. Unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, to date we have not had such a document for some of us who write projects and proposals and strategies. But our references are always from elsewhere. Latin America, mostly, sometimes Jamaica. Now we have our own. And therefore, I think I support Mr. Herman very strongly that this document should be promoted as a reference document. I don't know how the language will be, what language will be used, but that there should be careful attention to this information being included, integrated in the work relevant to resilient farming systems, which is what we're looking for. It would also be useful if the MOA would establish linkages of the organic farms with the food-based dietary guidelines for St. Lucia, thereby strengthening the chain for healthy diets from local production and possibly focused on reduced importation of fresh vegetables. And someone else referred to that because we don't know for sure about the methods used in terms of the production of the fresh vegetables that we import. But if we know how ours are being imported, produced using these organic methods, then we will be more comfortable. It is not unforeseen that there should be next time, and I'll say this in another way. Based on my experience, and I think the experience of many persons from the agriculture sector in this room, for decades, the agriculture sector has experienced hurricanes from time to time, disasters, which have devastated the sector, the farmers and the farming systems. And we recognize the support of our international partners. They respond very quickly. But the normal response has been and continues to be hundreds and thousands of dollars of bags of fertilizers and GMO for quick recovery of the sector. I think we can foresee that if we work in a deliberate way, seriously, using this document as a basis, placing it in the policies. I'm not a policy person, meaning I don't write policies very well. Strategies, projects, proposals, activities in the communities, we can bring our country to that stage where we are recognized as a country, focusing strongly and making good strides through organic methods in our farming systems. And so there may be the day when someone will think for a second time that instead of sending to St. Lucia $250,000 US dollars of chemical fertilizers and GMO seeds for quick recovery, you could think in terms of supporting the regeneration and restoration of the elements and materials for our organic farming systems. It is quite possible. I wouldn't say it's not possible. Little has been said about biopesticides, and this does not reflect that it's not as important as building organic soils, but I believe, and I think there is agreement, that central to building resilience in our farming systems is that achievement of an organic soil system in our agro-system that holds water, increases water capacity, holds the water, and provides the environment for microorganisms. Without that, we will not have a system, an agro-system, that will support plant growth. But I must say that I wouldn't leave the impression that the pesticides, biopesticides should not be given serious consideration for two reasons. One, which Mr. Herman mentioned, and that is the health aspect of it. The second one is that with rising temperature, we can see over time a serious change, significant change in pests and diseases, which if not dealt with, can change our biodiversity. If that happens, if that should happen, then you can immediately see that once our biodiversity is changing, this is where the genetic plant material we need to build, continue the building resilience in soils comes from. That material, we will need it over and over and over again. For biodiversity changes because of the negative impact of pests and diseases, then we are almost back at stage one, because we need now to be looking for new types of genetic material to keep building the system. So the issue of the biopesticides, to address that, is extremely important and is very critical, because we also need to follow that process. They both go together. But I thought that in 5 minutes, I chose to focus on the building of resilience through organic soils, because it's the broader issue. And I trust that in another session, Mr. Herman, someone else will deal with it. I trust that I have brought some clarity. If there are people here who are not in the agriculture sector and understand the challenges of building resilience in the agriculture sector with climate change, we'll really begin to see the value and the potential value of this document. And it's not a simple document. It brings clarity to the situation. It targets very well. It's deliberate, but it should be considered for a more developmental approach nationally, as I like to put it that way, whatever the language is that one would use, and it should not just remain as is. It should not just be on shelves, and I'll say this very quickly because we have seen other types of documents which we have said it's a good document for the sector. We buy them, they go on a shelf, and 5 years after, we can't find the document. And I would really like to encourage the powers that be, and the BVF and the GEF, to keep a close eye on this one. But the BVFC cannot do it alone. We need a strategic approach to get this to the place where it attracts the attention of technical assistance and more funding to get it to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Graham. And we now move to the third part of our program. You saw on your program some dotted lines which divided the program into 3 segments. We're now in Chapter 3, which we really, in keeping with the tradition of the NSC, GEF, the program, the office, sorry, there's a reward for voluntary contribution. And we have 2 citations, rewarding the work and recognizing and appreciating the work of former members of the National Steering Committee. The first citation will be read by Mr. Everest Jemari, a serving member of the NSC, to honor and appreciate a former member of the NSC. You'll have to come here and read it, you know.
Citation, Barbara Lyle Graham. In the 5th year of the St. Lucia Country Program, Barbara became the chair of the National Steering Committee. The request for her service to country was met with an immediate yes. Her work ethic was sustained and admirable, and she is credited for taking the program through its first significant growth and expansion period. Her power was in her listening, and the sound of silence spoke volumes. Her love for farmers and the youth was undeniable, and she championed livelihoods for grantees at every opportunity. She gave of her time generously in the field and at the desk, and she shall be remembered for her meticulous nature and for ensuring that the rigor of the scientific paradigm was never compromised. For her leadership and her emphasis for scientific rigor, GEF-SGP UNDP St. Lucia Country Program presents this citation with grateful appreciation to Barbara Lyle Graham on this, the 9th day of November, 2020.
Citation, Caroline Eugene. Before the ascendancy to a full country program, she was there. In the tough days when there were threats of closure, she stood resolute with a maternal instinct in full display. Then she went from savior to operational focal point. And again, she distinguished herself by representing the GEF-SGP UNDP St. Lucia program with distinction, both within the government service and at international meetings. For her purposeful and determined support for the spirit and operations of the SGP program in St. Lucia, GEF-SGP UNDP St. Lucia Country Program presents this citation with full appreciation to Caroline Eugene on this, the 9th day of November, 2020.
Thank you, everybody. This was a baby of mine from time immemorial. I'm happy to see that she or he has matured, and I know in capable hands right now. So I leave the process, but I am still around, and I know the work will continue as it should. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you very much, Barbara. We move now to our vote of thanks. This will be delivered by Mrs. Anela Jamark, Program Assistant, GEF-SGP UNDP.
Yeah, but not that. I'll hold on to it. Thank you. With the protocol already established, I bid everyone a wonderful morning. It is a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this launching ceremony such a resounding success. First of all, let me say that ideally, we would have loved to have all our guests with us at this venue to share in this moment, but due to the restrictions brought about from COVID-19, it was not possible. To our guests who are with us in this room, we thank you for seeing the need and importance to be with us in person. At the same time, to our guests who are with us virtually on Zoom, thank you for joining us. It brings us great pride and joy to see that you are willing to share your time with us. A hearty thank you to our Chair of Proceedings, Mr. Ember Charles, for taking us through today's program. You did a fantastic job in that role, as well as in the role of reading out the citation for our former NSC member, Ms. Caroline Eugene. To our in-house pastor, Mr. Everestus Jamari, your calling on to our Lord for a successful event was very effective. We thank you for your gracious words. We also thank you for reading the citation for our former chair of the NSC, Dr. Graham. To Dr. Rosemary Mathre, our current chair for the NSC, we thank you for welcoming all of us here and those who joined us by Zoom. Humble gratitude and thanks to our feature address speaker, Honorable Dr. Gail Rigobert, for gracing today's ceremony and for setting the tone to the launch of OP7. The GEF office has always been appreciative of the relationship that you and your ministry have maintained with us. particularly by providing us with operational funds, which we use to provide grants, and also in the form of providing us with an operational focal point person to be part of our steering committee. As we have now entered this new operational phase, Minister, we look forward to strengthening this relationship for the greater good of our country. Well, he was here. I was about to thank Mr. Joachim Henry, but he has already left. To Mr. Giles Romulus, the National Coordinator for the St. Lucia Country Program, thank you for your presentation and official launching of the 7th operational phase of grant funding for the program. As you alluded to in your speech, this launch is indeed a milestone for the GEF office, as it means that we are given 4 more years to work even harder in giving grants and providing opportunities for vulnerable people, marginalized people, and ordinary community people who want to bring positive change to their environment and the lives of their countrymen. And as you witnessed today, when we acknowledge the first set of grantees for Opus 7, the GEF office has already begun its work. Let me focus on those who are involved in the second segment of today's event, the launching of the book. To the staff and members of the Bellevue Farmers Corp, represented today by Mr. Felix Herman, I know you sit here beaming with elation of the launching of this book. The GEF office thanks your cooperative for taking on this initiative of bolstering the organic farming movement. We wish you best of luck in the sale of these books and in your journey of organic farming. The GEF office also says a hearty thank you to SLHTA, more specifically the CEO of the organization, Mr. Aziz, for co-sponsoring the printing of this book. Mr. Aziz, we are so thankful and honored that you understand how beneficial it is to help community organizations in making a difference in society. As Dr. Graham noted thankfully in her brief remarks, it is this type of support from the private sector that is needed by the community groups to strengthen the efforts in bringing positive change in the society. And the GEF office hopes to see more support from the private sector as we journey through Opus 7. Besides the SLHTA, I would like to thank all the writers, editors, and advisors who were instrumental in putting this book together. Your wealth of knowledge has now been captured in this book and can now be inspiration and relief to many farmers. Allow me to also thank the 2 former members of our National Steering Committee, Dr. Graham, the former chair, and Ms. Caroline, the former GEF operational focal point person. On behalf of the GEF office and the National Steering Committee, we thank you for your time, your effort, and your service. I speak on behalf of the GEF office when I say that you too will be missed. In closing, let me thank all other persons who were instrumental in today's proceedings, the representatives from the various ministries, our partner agencies, and our grantees. Thank you for being here today. And to the media, the IT specialists, and the volunteers, your service towards this event is greatly appreciated. Chair of Proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for your presence and for your participation. Let me add that before you leave, on your way out, we have a bag of goodies for you, and this bag of goodies are memorabilia for Opus 7. We have this cup, we have a USB drive, we have a pen, a phone holder, and of course, a beautiful bag. So all of these are promotional items for Opus 7. Oh, we also have a poster. Amber, open it up. So this you can pin up in your office, in your community, to promote GEF Opus 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janella. And in keeping with COVID protocols, I know you have been very, very, very good keeping your masks on throughout the proceedings. We won't ask you to take off your mask, but your refreshments will be served by the curb as you leave, so you could take them with you. And in case you didn't realize, we reached the end of the proceedings. Thank you very much, and have a good day. And I think I will impose on Mr. Herman to perhaps